They found my toothbrush in the server room. That's how the rumors started. Not the toothbrush itself, mint green, electric, still humming when they unplugged it, but the implications. Who lives in a server room? Who brings a toothbrush to the company's backup data center like it's a studio apartment with bad lighting and $200K of cloud infrastructure? They didn't know the half of it. I didn't sleep there, not exactly. I did have a cot behind rack C4. I did have a personal VPN tunneling from their gateway. And I did set up a small espresso rig under the fire suppression pipe, because that place had better uptime than my actual apartment. I was the dev ops lead for a fintech firm whose founders thought CI/CD was a luxury sedan. They hired me because I was cheaper than an AWS consultant and less combative than their last SRE. Rage quit after being told Kubernetes was too negative sounding. I didn't correct them. I just automated everything they didn't understand, and they didn't understand 93% of it. For 18 months, I worked quietly, invisibly from home, and everything worked. The pipelines purred, the deployments danced, the load balancer held like a stoic little soldier in a war nobody else noticed. The CTO called it magic. I called it Tuesday, and came the message that split my career like an overripe peach. Hey everyone, starting next week, no more remote days. Leadership believes in face-to-face synergy. Let's reconnect. Synergy. They always use that word when they're about to take something from you. I didn't respond right away. I just sat there staring at that Slack notification like it had slapped me with my own mousepad. It wasn't just the loss of WFH Wednesday, it was the why. This wasn't about collaboration. It was control dressed up in casual core optimism. And I knew who pushed it. Michelle, head of people operations. Her actual job title might as well have been vibe enforcer. She'd never coded a line in her life, but had opinions trademark about engineering morale. Ever since I refused to attend her Friday icebreaker called Dev and Let Die, she treated me like a data leak in human form. So I complied. I showed up that next Wednesday at 8:58 a.m. sharp, dressed like I gave a damn, button-down shirt, minimal eye roll, hair in something resembling order. I smiled at the receptionist. I said hi to finance. I even waved at the guy from legal who once asked me what an API looked like. Then I clocked into my terminal, and with the soft click of one command, I began extracting everything. Pipelines, scripts, Terraform modules, even my custom rollback tools, little digital miracles that kept their disastrous hotfixes from nuking prod. One by one, I moved them, obfuscated them, cloned them. All to a private repo linked to a fresh server image under a different name. No breadcrumbs, no audit trails. They'd never notice. Not yet. And the best part? I did it all from my desk in plain sight while sipping Michelle's favorite oat milk latte from the office kitchen. Even smiled at me. Glad you're here in person today, she said. I smiled back. Me too. But my code, my real work, was already halfway out the door. And soon their infrastructure wouldn't belong to them anymore. It would belong to me. To us, actually. But I'll get to that. 3 days later, I got a calendar invite titled Quick Alignment Sync Smiling Face with Smiling Eyes, which in corporate tongue means we're about to gaslight you with catered muffins. I clicked accept, not because I wanted to, but because it was from Michelle and Mark, the VP of engineering who once asked if our cloud pods were affected by weather. These were the people deciding my fate. People who'd never touched YAML, but had strong feelings about tone in Jira comments. So I showed up. Big glass conference room. Oversized succulents. That one HR intern who always looks like he's about to cry, but might just be allergic to accountability. Michelle greeted me with her usual Bodox smile and handed me a green smoothie like it was a bribe made of kale. Mark started with the classic opener. We just want to check in, see how you're feeling about the transition back to the office. I nodded. Neutral. Corporate lobotomized. Adjusting, I said. The espresso machine helps. Michelle chimed in like a sentient vision board. We really value your expertise. You've built such robust scaffolding. But we want to make sure you're not siloing yourself. That word again. Siloing. Translation, you're too good at your job and it scares us. I waited. Mark cleared his throat. We'd like you to start onboarding Tyler. Now that made me blink. Tyler was a CrossFit tech bro with a GitHub profile that looked like a parking ticket. Been hired as a DevOps partner, which apparently meant he shadowed me, asked questions like what does Nginx do, and bragged about microdosing at 10 a.m. His last Jenkins build had triggered a full rollback. He called it a learning spike. I kept my expression neutral, but inside, something clicked. This wasn't about teamwork. This was a phase out. They were planning to extract everything they could from me, and then pass it to Tyler, rebrand my work as his, parade him around like some Kubernetes messiah. I was the ghost architect. He was the face for investors. Cute. So that night, I didn't go home. I stayed late to troubleshoot a DNS drift issue. In reality, I spun up a new encrypted tunnel and began syncing my entire CI/CD history to a private instance. Every log, every deploy key, every script I'd written, and every fallback plan they didn't even know existed. While Jenkins smiled at them like everything was fine, I rewired the entire deployment stack to depend on a single external service. Mine. I called it Canary Core. It looked like a harmless test module, something only a paranoid dev would notice. But the moment they tried to deploy without it, their system would fold like cheap origami. I left the office at 2:47 a.m., exhausted but electric. My pocket was the access key to a remote cluster tagged under a completely different LLC, one I'd quietly incorporated last year when layoffs hit half our engineering team, and I realized I was building a machine that didn't belong to me. But now it did, because when they took away my remote day, they also took away my reason to stay loyal. And Tyler, that boy had no idea he was walking into a minefield made of cron jobs and smug vengeance. By Monday, Tyler had a standing desk, a ring light, and the kind of confidence only possessed by men who've never been told no by anything except maybe a CAPTCHA. He walked in with a shaker bottle and a startup hoodie 2 sizes too small, slapped me on the back like we were frat brothers, and said, "Heard I'm your DevOps Robin now. Let's build some batchet pipelines." I stared at him for 2 full seconds, wondering if he thought Jenkins was a Marvel character. "Touch anything in production," I said, "and I will make the CI scream loud enough to wake compliance." He laughed like I was joking. They always laugh. Michelle, of course, hovered like an HR drone programmed for morale enforcement. She called it co-mentoring, which was her corporate euphemism for hand over everything without looking like you're being mugged. So, fine. I started showing him the ropes, but not my ropes. I gave him a sandboxed mirror of the system. Looked real, smelled real. But behind the scenes, it was running on mock data and endpoints that were routed back to an isolated container I called Tyler Safe. Every time he made a change, it triggered a fake deployment that sent Slack updates to a ghost channel I'd created with webhooks tied to a Raspberry Pi in my coat closet. Meanwhile, I kept working from my real stack, now living comfortably inside my startup's infrastructure under a label called Legacy Import v0.1. Harmless, boring, invisible. The magic of it all, they were praising him. I'd walk by and hear Mark say, "Nice work on that latency fix, Tyler. That's the kind of impact we need." Tyler, yeah, just optimized some endpoint logic. Meanwhile, his optimized logic was being intercepted, rewritten, and discarded before it ever left the sandbox. I had full control. He was basically playing Minecraft. But the real turning point came Thursday morning. Michelle burst into the war room, clutching a printout like it was a holy scroll. Her face pale, voice a pitch higher than usual. "Did anyone authorize a mass infrastructure rename?" Everyone turned. Tyler blinked. No." She slapped the paper onto the table. Dozens of instance names, all changed. Not in production. Not even in staging. But in Canary Core, I froze. Not because I was guilty, but because someone had found it. Not Michelle, not Tyler, someone else. I pulled up my dashboard from a terminal I kept hidden behind a Notepad++ window, and there it was, access logs. A single IP internal masked. Someone had been inside Canary Core at 3:22 a.m., and they hadn't touched anything. Just observed. No changes. No pings. No alerts. A ghost in my ghost system. That's when I knew I wasn't the only one playing this game. Someone else was watching, and they were smarter than Tyler. The moment I saw that ghost access, my skin went cold. Not the kind of cold you get when Jenkins crashes mid-deploy. I mean deep, lizard brain cold, like you just stepped into a room that's too quiet and smells faintly of bleach. I locked my screen and bolted to the bathroom. Stared at myself in the mirror under those soul-sucking fluorescent lights, like maybe my reflection would tell me what the hell was going on. Someone had tunneled into Canary Core without tripping a single alarm. My alarms were paranoid. I had honey tokens, fake credentials, decoy endpoints. If you sneezed on the wrong port, it screamed like a goat in a blender. But this visitor, smooth, clean, left no mess. Either it was a fluke or someone on the inside had quietly decided I wasn't the only one laying traps. I spent the next 2 hours auditing everything. Every inbound connection, every shadow process. I even checked the damn coffee machine logs because yes, in this office, the espresso machine had an IP address and a web interface that once got dedo said by a bored intern. Nothing. The access route was tunneled through a decommissioned build agent. One I'd mothballed 6 months ago. One that was supposed to be dead. That's when the paranoia tipped into clarity. This wasn't random. Someone was waiting, watching what I was building, letting me do the heavy lifting, and mapping it out like a parasite hiding in the spine of the system. I took a gamble. I deployed a decoy payload, a juicy-looking repo titled Core Transition Final v3. Zip, packed with fake credentials, doc files with nonsense names like Token Strategy vNext, and a shell script that would ping me the moment someone cracked it open. Then I waited. Ping came in 19 minutes later. And guess where it came from? Linda's laptop. Linda, our sweet, cardigan-wrapped head of accounting, the woman who still used Internet Explorer out of spite, the woman who thought cloud storage meant the ceiling tiles where marketing kept their foam signs. Except Linda was on vacation in Vermont, snowboarding with her wife. I'd seen the Instagram stories. There was no way she was in our building, let alone snooping through DevOps payloads like she was auditioning for Mr. Robot. I marched straight to IT. Ryan, the sysadmin with the Cheeto-dusted keyboard and the moral backbone of a wet noodle, tried to stonewall me. We can't just hand out device logs, Jess. There's a process. I leaned in and said, "You want to talk process, Ryan? Because I can show you one where Canary Core gets nuked in front of the board next week. Real time, with your name all over the audit logs." He turned gray. 10 minutes later, I had what I needed. Linda's machine hadn't moved, hadn't even been turned on since Friday, but her credentials had, used from a static IP upstairs in an unregistered subnet. One tied to a machine ID labeled execghost02. That wasn't standard inventory. That was Blackroom gear. That was board-level access. Someone at the top was poking around in my system with puppet strings made of C-suite permissions. I closed my laptop, walked out, bought a burner phone at a gas station on the edge of town, and sent a single message to a number I hadn't used in a year. It's happening. Initiate failover. Launch mirror stack. Because if someone at the top wanted my system, they were about to find out what happens when you try to steal a goddamn hive full of wasps. Reply came 6 hours later. One word, no punctuation. Done. That's how my co-founder speaks, like every sentence costs money and empathy's been deprecated. She's an ex-Google SRE with a grudge against authority and a wrist tattoo of a broken SLA. We started mirror stack over whiskey, burnout, and mutual hatred of team-building retreats. I built the bones. She sharpened the teeth. So when she said done, I knew the clone was live. Not just a backup, full, production-ready twin of their infrastructure. Same endpoints, same configs, but running entirely on our metal with a single toggle between them and digital purgatory. I'd built the kill switch. She just wired it to the fuse box. Back at the office, things got weirder. Tyler, bless his himbo heart, started bragging about a custom performance patch he allegedly wrote. The same patch I'd implemented 3 weeks ago. Word for word, identical down to the variable names. When I confronted him, he had the gall to wink and say, "It's all about teamwork, right?" I almost shoved a whiteboard marker through his eye socket. Michelle started inviting him to strategy meetings, high-level, stakeholder-facing. The kind I used to attend before I stopped playing the political flute. They were positioning him. But for what? That's when I saw it on the quarterly roadmap, half buried in a Q3 infrastructure optimization slide. Phase out legacy CI systems. Move to in-house solution. Except I was the legacy CI system. They were planning a full migration, not from AWS to Azure, not from Jenkins to GitLab, from me to Tyler. Michelle must have found Canary Core. Maybe not the whole structure, but enough to see its shape. enough to think she could replicate it, repackage it, white label my brain work and sell it to the board as a lean, internalized asset. Strip out the part that scares them, the part with opinions, autonomy, me, and hand it to a grinning golden retriever in a hoodie. That's when the emails started disappearing. Not big things, just little messages. Auto alerts, build logs, Slack pings that should have come but didn't. I cross-checked my forwarding rules. Clean. No filters. No errors. They weren't broken. They were intercepted. Someone had spun up an internal relay. My messages were being rerouted and scrubbed before they reached me. I was being ghosted inside my own system. Death by 1,000 silent 404s, so I pushed back. I hardwired a beacon into a Jenkins node, one that would call home to my Mirror Stack instance the moment Canary Core was compromised beyond rollback. A digital panic button, if you will. Then I wrote a script. A beautiful, horrible script. If triggered, it would redirect every production deployment to Mirror Stack. Flip the DNS. Replicate the traffic. Replace the backbone of the company's infrastructure with my own. They'd never know until it was too late. I called it Coup SH, but I didn't run it. Not yet. Because the next morning, Tyler wasn't at his desk. Neither was Michelle. And the CTO's office? Locked. That's when a push notification hit my phone. Mirror Stack 14 new user registrations from internal IP block 14. All tagged with admin roles. Someone had found the switch, and they were trying to flip it first. I sprinted to the stairwell. Elevators felt like a gamble, and I wasn't about to get stuck in a corporate coffin while someone hijacked my life's work. Took the stairs 3 at a time, heart jackhammering, mind racing. Floor 7. Floor 8. I passed a couple interns carrying cold brew and existential dread. They barely noticed the woman in black sprinting like a glitch in the Matrix. By the time I hit floor 10, exec, my lungs were burning. My phone buzzed again. Mirror Stack alert, attempted access override from admin level key. Access denied. Auto lockdown initiated. User MW. Location. Executive LAN terminal ID. Ghost 02MW. Mark. VP of Engineering. Guy who once told me resilience is just good vibes in your code base. I burst into the executive suite. Security badge override still worked, bless their outdated permission schema. The lights were dim, blinds down, boardroom door shut. Inside, Mark, Michelle, and a stranger in a navy blazer whose watch cost more than my car. They were huddled around a conference laptop like it was a sacrificial altar. Mark looked up mid-keystroke and froze. Jess, know you were scheduled, you're in my system, I snapped. And you've tripped a lockdown you don't understand. Michelle, voice like poisoned honey, were consolidating infrastructure. Your stack was undocumented. You mean proprietary. You mean mine. Blazer Guy spoke. His voice was clean, expensive. We've reviewed your system. Impressive work. But it belongs to the company. I laughed. Actually laughed. You found Canary Core and thought you could just copy-paste it. Your stack isn't a clone. It's a rebuild. You're not migrating systems. You're trespassing. Mark shifted, trying for calm. Jess, let's talk. No, I said. You had your talking window. Now it's response time. I pulled out the burner phone. They froze. Michelle blinked. You wouldn't. I already did. You just haven't felt it yet. The phone vibrated again. Mirror Stack deployment successful. And then the lights in the boardroom flickered. Across the building, status monitors turned amber. Jenkins' dashboards bled red. Production logs hiccuped. On every dev terminal, a banner unfurled. Welcome to Mirror Stack infrastructure secured by the people who built it. Michelle lunged for the laptop. I was faster. I slammed the lid shut. You don't own this infrastructure, I said. You rented me. And then tried to evict the architect. Blazer Guy stood, suddenly not as smooth. This is theft. You're making a mistake. I smiled, then sue me. Because here's the thing, Mirror Stack wasn't just a twin. It was a licensed platform, spun off legally 6 months ago under an LLC I registered with my co-founder. The codebase, distinct. The tools, proprietary. The systems, built from scratch using public cloud credits and pure spite. Their infrastructure just switched from in-house to leased, and I held the lease. Mark opened his mouth. But just then, another notification hit. Investor query. Mirror Stack's recent deployment recognized in DevOps Journal. Interest from 3 VCs. Oh, look. Someone was paying attention. They called an emergency all hands. Well, technically, it was branded Team Realignment Fireside Chat, but the only thing burning was the executive team's credibility. We all sat in the main conference room, engineers, PMs, the leftover skeleton crew from QA, watched Mark sweat through his startup casual flannel as he clicked through a PowerPoint that looked like it had been built in a bunker 5 minutes ago. You may have noticed some, changes to our deployment pipeline, understatement of the year. Half the dev team thought we were under cyber attack. One guy in data ops threw his badge in the trash and fled the building when his Grafana dashboards went dark. Rest assured, leadership has taken proactive steps to integrate with MirrorStack. It's all part of our evolving infrastructure strategy. My phone vibrated. Text from my co-founder, VC#2 wants a meeting. They think this was a planned rollout. Should we play it that way? I typed back, absolutely. Let them think we orchestrated a hostile migration like it was on a Gantt chart. Michelle tried to take the mic next, launching into one of her patented gaslight me softly routines about collaboration over conflict and rebuilding trust, the same woman who tried to rebrand my code as legacy overhead. I leaned back, crossed my arms, and waited, because the next act didn't belong to me. It belonged to Tyler. He stood up, awkwardly at first, still wearing that idiotic smile that said, "I've never been held accountable for anything." But he looked nervous, like maybe he finally realized that pushing fake commits into a sandbox doesn't make you an engineer. "Hey guys, I just want to clarify something," he said. "I've been working with Jess on a transition plan for weeks, and I fully support this rollout. It was always the goal to scale up her framework." I tilted my head. He was trying to ride the beast, trying to pivot from fraud to visionary ally in real time. "Her MirrorStack system is brilliant," he added. "I think the board should be applauding this level of innovation." Honestly, I was just lucky to be part of it. The room was silent. I looked him in the eye. "Tyler," I said calmly, "what does Canary Wait do in a rollout script?" He blinked. Exactly. Sit down." Muffled chuckles, a couple claps. Tyler's ears turned the color of a stop sign. He sat, muttering something about checking on a Jenkins job. Mark cleared his throat like he was choking on pride. "Well, regardless of the rollout path, I want to personally thank Jess for her contributions. She's agreed to partner with us during this transition." I cut him off. "No, Mark, I haven't." He paused. "You haven't?" "No. What I have done is issued a 90-day service license for MirrorStack. After that, it's subscription only. $8,000 per month, per deployment cluster. Discounted rates for not being assholes." The projector went dead silent. Could hear someone's cold brew fizz. "Jess," Michelle began, tone brittle as glass, "you can't just sell back company property." "I didn't. You never owned it." And then I stood, calm, unshaken. "I suggest the board reach out soon. Before the investors I'm speaking to decide you're no longer worth the support contract." And I walked out, not fast, not smug, just done pretending the system wasn't mine. Because the next meeting wasn't going to be with Mark or Michelle. It was going to be with the people ready to fund the thing they tried to kill. By the time I hit the parking garage, my phone buzzed again, this time a call. It was from a private number, which wasn't unusual given the state of things. But it was the voice on the other end that caught my attention. "Jess, this is Walter from Viridian Ventures. We've been watching your system roll out. I think we need to talk." Viridian Ventures was not a name I expected to hear in this circus. We're the kind of VCs who gave multi-million-dollar rounds to companies based on a pitch deck and a handshake, not a GitHub commit. They were the ones with the yachts, the velvet-covered boardrooms, the shiny branding that promised change, the kind of venture capital that only cared about numbers. Except, this time, they were talking to me. "I don't do pitch meetings," I said, leaning against my car, trying not to laugh. "You'll have to buy the rights to the tech first." There was a pause. I could hear the shuffle of papers on the other end. "I don't think you understand, Jess. We've seen enough to know MirrorStack can't just disappear now. Our tech partners are looking for a DevOps solution exactly like what you've built. The board is asking, well, demanding, answers about why we weren't part of this. You've got leverage here." I stood a little straighter. "I'm not interested in leverage, Walter. I'm interested in being compensated for a product I built." Laughed. It wasn't mocking. It was more like a man who realized he'd just made a deal he couldn't back out of. "Fair enough. So, how does this sound? We can help transition your startup into a series in the next 3 months. We'll give you full access to our network, and you'll get a seat at the table." "A seat at the table, huh?" I asked, leaning my head back against the car. "Tell me, Walter, what's the price of a seat at your table these days?" Let's just say, he said, voice suddenly more serious, you'll be in good company. We'll fund the infrastructure. We'll help scale your team, and you'll never have to explain why your system's broken to a board of people who don't get it ever again. I could feel the tension leave my shoulders, not relief, just clarity. I'd been watching them too, watching their moves, waiting for them to show their hand. They had thought they could steal from me, pretend I was just another cog in the machine. It turned out I had the cards. I always had. You got yourself a deal, Walter. I didn't say goodbye, I hung up. Then I finally smiled. For the first time in days, I felt in control again. A few hours later, my startup was getting calls from the very people who tried to bury it. The same execs who couldn't find their way through a Jenkins build if it was spelled out for them. And here's the kicker, Tyler. The one they thought was the golden boy. He was still sitting at his desk, pretending he understood what was happening. But I knew. Tyler wasn't the future. I was. The system I built, my rules, my tech, my terms, was the future. And by the time they realized it, I was already 6 steps ahead.